The classroom of the future doesn't have four walls. The chalkboards and heavy textbooks are being replaced by glowing interfaces and cloud-based curricula. Evocation has moved online. Today, computer literacy and basic familiarity with AI are becoming core components of the curriculum. From 5-year-olds beginning their education to 65-year-olds reskilling, these tools are being framed as the new foundational literacies for a digital-first economy. National governments are pushing this transition aggressively. Massive state initiatives are rolling out unified platforms designed to beam standardized lessons directly to connected devices across the country. But delivering on that promise requires looking at the sheer demographic math. By the year 2030, the Indian education system is projected to have roughly 300 million students actively enrolled. If the future of learning is strictly digital, the physical infrastructure has to match it. That means producing, distributing, and maintaining 300 million individual screens. Attempting to equip a student population larger than the entire population of most countries by the end of the decade raises a critical question. Is this a solvable logistical puzzle or an impossible math problem? The distance between the political vision and the ground-level reality is vast. In countless rural districts, students still gather outdoors on woven mats, doing their daily arithmetic on traditional chalk slates. The barrier to entry is deeply economic. A standard entry-level tablet retails between $100 and $200. For millions of low-income families relying on daily wage labor, that hardware is entirely out of reach. Geography heavily dictates access. While urban hubs integrate smartboards and high-speed Wi-Fi into daily instruction, many rural village schools operate with a single chalkboard, a dirt floor, and zero existing technological infrastructure. This chart compares the national mandate for complete digital learning against current hardware constraints. Right now, 57% of schools lack basic functioning computers, and 54% operate without any internet access whatsoever. Moving towards a digital-only curriculum while these hardware deficits persist creates a significant risk. Without intervention, the lack of infrastructure in rural areas threatens to widen the existing gap between different student populations. Solving a hardware gap this large requires mobilizing the domestic supply chain. Vast electronic assembly facilities are being tasked with becoming the engine that powers this educational shift. To meet the overwhelming demand, the state is heavily subsidizing local assembly lines, while locking in component partnerships with global tech suppliers, rapidly scaling up domestic output. Planners outline 3 distribution pathways. First, a direct one-to-one model, with governments providing individual devices. Second, shared community labs, where multiple students rotate on the same terminal daily. Third, stripped-down $50 devices locked to educational apps, minimizing per-unit costs. When viewed strictly as a supply chain equation, the goal of producing 300 million devices sets a massive industrial benchmark, one that relies entirely on these theoretical distribution models being executed at an unprecedented scale. But a tablet sitting on a rough wooden desk in a remote village does not inherently provide an education. Without a living network feeding it data, a screen is just glass and plastic. Before a single line of code can be written, the device requires constant energy. Keeping hundreds of millions of daily use batteries charged demands massive upgrades to rural power grids, ensuring steady electricity even in the most remote districts. Once powered, the device needs a signal. Accessing AI tools and cloud-based video tutorials requires dense, uninterrupted broadband networks and rural 5G towers capable of handling extreme data loads simultaneously. Finally, there is the human element. The most sophisticated educational software is ineffective if the person leading the classroom doesn't understand it. This requires massive, nationwide training programs to teach existing educators how to actually integrate these digital systems into their daily lesson plans. This pie chart illustrates the true financial and logistical breakdown. The physical screen represents roughly 10% of the challenge. The surrounding ecosystem, the power, the connectivity, and the trained educators, accounts for the other 90%. Real educational progress goes far beyond handing a child a piece of technology. Making a 2030 digital mandate work requires rewiring the physical and socio-economic infrastructure of the country to support the world running behind that screen.